I made a popcorn village and I'm going to show it to you. Hey guys, today I want to talk about this. I call it the popcorn village. Why is it called the popcorn village, you might ask? Is it made of popcorn? Can you eat popcorn out of it? Does it make a pop sound like popcorn? No, none of the above, even though that would be very cool. The reason it's called Popcorn Village is simply because my inspiration for how to wear this piece came from old school vending trays, like the kind you would see people wear in a cinema back in the day to sell popcorn from. Let me show you what this looks like on. Ta-da! However, when I did some research on the history of vending trays in preparation for this episode, I learned that popcorn isn't necessarily the main thing that those trays were used for back in the day. Beginning in the 1920s in the US, there was a rise of so-called cigarette girls. Cigarette girls were women who would sell or provide cigars or cigarettes from a vending tray carried on the body and held up by a neck strap. Originally, cigarette girls were mostly seen in speakeasies and supper clubs, but then they began being featured in a lot of Hollywood films, and that's how they became more known to the general public. When Prohibition ended in 1933, speakeasies all across America closed, and so cigarette girls began finding employment in other types of venues. Now they became common in clubs, restaurants, casinos, bars, and airports all throughout the 1930s and 40s. And at the end of World War II and into the 1950s, cigarette girls further expanded and began popping up at sporting events, as well as music halls and theaters where they would sell during intermissions. But with the rise of cigarette machines in the 1950s, the jobs dried up and ultimately vanished. That's a little vending tray crash course for you. Now, vending trays may be closely related to cigarettes, but vending trays also popped up in movie theaters, and there the girls would be called usherettes, and they would sell candy, ice cream, and popcorn from their trays. For some reason, I guess the popcorn tray is what I knew and had seen in films and photos the most, because when I made this piece a few years ago, I thought of the vending tray primarily as a popcorn tray. And that's the explanation, albeit rather long, for why I named the piece Popcorn Village. And as for the village part of the piece, it lights up. The inspiration for the village itself came from the intro vignette to an old Swedish kids show called Skymningssagor, which translates into Dusk Tales or Tales at Dusk. And it was on Swedish TV in the early to mid 90s. I grew up watching that show and I absolutely adored that intro vignette, and I think it's informed this piece in a lot of ways. I went with the vending tray design to make the piece easy to take off and on and to move around with so that I could wear it on stage while singing and performing with my old band. The whole piece is made out of chicken wire and paper mache, and the chicken wire makes up the skeleton of the piece to give it that extra strength, seeing as I was going to be performing with it. And then I painted it all in acrylic paint. The lights are my favorite, Christmas string lights that I inserted into the piece as I was working on the piece, so now they're sealed in there. And then I attached this fabric strap. I don't recall using it a ton, but it made it on stage a few times for sure, and it's a dear piece to me. And that's something I made. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit a thumbs up and leave a comment below. And why not hit subscribe? I'll see you next week. Bye.